definitions and examples. Finally, how does the dialogue end?
This definitely fits the lifestyle of the Bancroft woman, don't you think?
Well, I must say, I'm very impressed.
Here, let me show you more. Look at the range of outfits you can put together.
What is happening in this part of the dialogue? In retailing these days, we are concerned with creating and appealing to a lifestyle. The Bancroft stores appeal to women who are professional and busy, women who are always on the go. This is their target market. Francesca talks about how the advantages of Viva clothing, wearable, washable, durable, fashionable, versatile, would provide benefits to Bancroft shoppers. So benefits are advantages to a specific customer or group of customers. Unlike features, benefits can change depending on who is buying the product. Using fab to sell means skillfully portraying the advantages of our products and their features and describing how these advantages provide a benefit to a specific customer. When customers see benefits to them, they will buy. Let's practice that. Listen to some sample sentences explaining the benefit of products.
The portability of our system gives you unsurpassed flexibility.
The eye-catching packaging enables you to sell more products faster.
Its robust construction ensures that this machine will stand up to the toughest environments.
The high-tech design of this computer allows it to work underwater.
The unit is very compact, which makes it easy to transport.
As you can see, gives you, ensures you can, enables you to, allows it to, and makes it are several ways to explain how advantages are linked to benefits. Now it's your turn to practice. Imagine you are describing a new product that your company has just produced. It's a high-tech new kind of cell phone. You're trying to sell the phone to a customer who will need to use it in remote areas at construction sites. You'll hear a series of cues which consist of an advantage and a benefit. Link the advantage to the benefit using some of the language we have studied, such as helps you to, ensures you can. Are you ready? Let's give it a try.
Durability. Withstand a large range of temperatures. Sophisticated technology. Connect to the Internet anywhere in the world. Compact design. Easy to carry with you anywhere.
Now, listen to some answers.
Durability. Withstand a large range of temperatures.
Answer. Its durability enables it to withstand a large range of temperatures.
Sophisticated technology. Connect to the Internet anywhere in the world.
Answer. Its sophisticated technology ensures you can connect to the Internet anywhere in the world.
Compact design. Easy to carry with you anywhere. Answer.
Its compact design makes it easy to carry with you anywhere.
Before we finish, let's review the key useful language for describing benefits. You'll hear a series of sentences. In each phrase, one word is missing, replaced with a beep. Repeat the whole sentence, saying the missing word.
The unit is very compact, which it easy to transport. Answer. The unit is very compact, which makes it easy to transport.
The eye-catching packaging you to sell more products faster. Answer. The eye-catching packaging enables you to sell more products faster.
The portability of our system. You unsurpassed flexibility. Answer. The portability of our system gives you unsurpassed flexibility.
That's all for this episode on classic product presentations. We've seen how describing our products in terms of features, advantages, and benefits to the customer can help us sell. And we've studied vocabulary for describing colors, styles, and advantages of various kinds, as well as language for explaining benefits. Remember to review the study notes. There, you'll find language review exercises, a complete transcript, and vocabulary explanations for this and other lessons. To find more ways to improve your English, visit our online learning center at www.businessenglishpod.com. Thanks for listening.
Want to get more out of Business English Pod? Then go to www.businessenglishpod.com and sign up as a premium member. Premium members can access detailed study notes and the new Phrasecast to practice all the useful language we featured today. Presenting for Success, Unit 1, Making Your Introduction. Today we look at some of the language used during internal presentations. To start off this episode, I've asked some of my colleagues what tips they might have for making a good introduction. Following that, we have the main dialogue and then the debrief. So here's me putting my colleagues right on the spot. Okay, we're talking about presentations and in particular introductions to presentations. Jeff, do you have any guidelines you use when you're writing, preparing, or actually doing an introduction? Is there something that you always keep in mind and say, well, this is what I always do and must do?
Well, you know, in English we talk about something called an elevator pitch, which is like a summary of a proposal or an idea that takes maybe no more than 10 or 15 seconds to explain. The idea is that it should be short enough that you can actually give it to somebody in an elevator, just in that very brief period of time that you have their attention. Now, I think when you're beginning a presentation, in some ways you're in the same situation. You may be planning to give a very long speech. It could last 30 or 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But you've only got that first minute or so to convince people that they ought to be listening to what you're going to say. So you've got to give them some good reasons to listen to everything else that's coming up. Give them an idea of what you're going to say and why they should be listening.
Do you have a formula, Peter? I do. If you don't,
Well,
this is the one I
please
use.
tell me.
What's the formula?
Let me get my pen.
Well, I got this formula from a certain school a long time ago, and it's pretty good. It has all the elements I think should be in every presentation,
Yeah.
whether it's formal or informal.
Okay, well, tell us.
Your name. Well, first of all, a greeting. You know, you have to say hi
I think you should always start with thank you.
or welcome. Or welcome.
I think thank you.
Or hello.
Thank you and welcome.
Well, why don't we put them on? Hello, thank you, and welcome to whatchamacallit.
You can put them all together.
You can put them all together, one package. And then a name. I think it's kind of rude not to tell people exactly who you
Right.
are and your title, what your job is, or why you are qualified to speak on the subject.
And that's a good point. You know, a lot of internal presentations these days are done over either telephone conference or video conference. And you've got people from different international locations. They might have heard your name, but they might not know your face. And so when you get up to speak, even within your company and even maybe your division or your department, it is, as you say, good manners, but also it's important.
You know, I think a lot of the listeners on these podcasts, they themselves are very accomplished speakers in their own language. And so I'm sure they know how to make a speech or a presentation. And hopefully, though, this podcast will give these speakers and others the ideas of how the types of language we use in presentations, and in particular, introductions on this particular podcast. Okay, everybody, let's all take a seat and get things started. We have a long day ahead of us, and we need to keep to the schedule. So let's see how our video conference line is working. Hello, Sydney and New York. Can both of you hear us and see us okay?
Yes, Perry, we have our whole sales group here. Everything's working okay, and we're ready when you are.
Loud and clear here in New York too, Perry.
Okay then. Leading off this morning is Claude Daughtry from Consumer Products Division, and he'll be presenting some of the latest sales figures and trends for our product lines in this very key sector. Claude, if you're ready, please take it away.
Thank you, Perry. And good morning, everybody. A warm welcome from our Paris office, whether you're here in person or here via video from Sydney or New York. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Claude Daughtry, Senior Sales Analyst from our Consumer Products Division, and I'll be presenting our analysis of recent sales data. We will then examine some important trends and conclusions we can make about the growth of our product lines. After that, we plan to look at some forecasts and propose sales strategies to adjust to the trends we see developing. During this kickoff meeting, we hope to arrive at some recommendations to forward to senior management before their next shareholder meeting. And finally, we'll open it up to any questions you might have about sales in general, whether it concerns the EU, the Americas, or the Asia-Pacific region. I estimate my prepared remarks will cover about 30 minutes, and the next 30 minutes will be dedicated to answering your questions. Hopefully, you've all received the handout material I sent, but I'll also be showing the charts in PowerPoint, in case you don't have your handouts with you. So, let's take a look at our first topic, yes, you have a question?
Yes, sorry to interrupt. I was wondering if you plan to talk about global marketing efforts and how they tie into regional sales promotions.
Building up a spirit of teamwork in an internal meeting is very important, especially during the introduction stage of a presentation. Personality plays a part, but some simple language patterns do help. Use pronouns such as we, all, us, our, ours, and everybody as much as possible. For example, when starting a meeting, we can say,
Well, why don't we all get started?
Let's all take our seats if we could.
Is everybody ready to start?
Okay, let's kick this meeting off.
The introduction phase sets the tone and expectations of a meeting or presentation. Although very often the presenter will introduce him or herself to the audience, sometimes another person may introduce the speaker, as in our example, where the presenter was introduced by the chairperson of the teleconference. A complete introduction for a presentation includes the following parts: a greeting, a name and position, the title and subject, the objective or goal of the presentation, the main parts of the talk, a mention of the visual aids that will be used, the time it will take, when questions should be asked, a reference to the audience, and a link to the first section of the presentation. Not all presentation introductions will have every one of these elements, and not all will follow this sequence. However, most proper introductions will use a majority of these elements in some form and in this general sequence. Let's start with some greetings.
Good morning, everybody.
Good afternoon and welcome to the North American Division.
Welcome, all of you, to the Smith Center.
I thank you all for coming this evening to our first employee benefits review.
The name and position of the presenter usually follows. If the presenter is well known amongst the audience, he may not even mention his own name. If most of the people know the presenter, then they may precede their self-introduction with, "For those of you who don't know me." However, When presenting in front of large or widely separated departments, it is customary to introduce yourself with not only your own full name, but your title and area of responsibility. This tells audience members who you are, what your position is, and what sort of knowledge or duties you have concerning the presentation subject. Let's try some names and titles.
My name is, and I'm the HR manager for our UK operation.
I'm a test engineer for the QC department.
My name is Alison Wright, and I'm the HR manager for our UK operation.
I'm Chuck Yeager, and I'm a test engineer with quality control.
When introducing one's duties or areas of knowledge, we usually use the words, I am responsible for, or I am in charge of. Let's try some of these.
I'm responsible for new employee training.
I'm in charge of test data collection.
I'm responsible for designing new electrical switches.
I manage regional sales promotions in South America.
Try combining the above phrases into complete introductory statements that include name, title, and area of responsibility. For example, taking the first phrase of each part, we could say,
Good morning, everybody. My name is Alison Wright. I'm the HR manager for our London division, and I'm responsible for new employee training.
After the beep, introduce yourself and state your responsibilities at your company. Then, listen to an example answer to compare. Of course, the details of everyone's answer will be a little different.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Alison Wright. I'm the HR manager for our London division, and I'm responsible for new employee training.
After the presenter introduces himself and his position, the subject of the presentation is then usually stated, along with the purpose of the presentation. A well-designed presentation will then include a guide to the rest of the talk. The presenter will tell the audience what is to come and what parts of the presentation will be presented in which order. This is called signposting, like the signs on street corners that tell a traveler where he is and where he's going. Signposting helps to focus the audience's attention. We'll cover signposting in the next podcast. Welcome to Business English Pod, a great way to improve your English skills on the go. Internal presentations, signposting. Today we're looking at signposting during presentations. Signposting is informing listeners about what is to be presented in a presentation, and then constantly informing listeners as to where they are during that presentation.
And that about wraps it up for the detailed sales figures. Now, let's see what we can conclude from the sales data. I've divided this section of the presentation into 3 parts. First, we're going to review historical sales in this market segment. Next, we'll discuss developing sales trends. And finally, we'll compare our performance with our chief competitors. So, let's talk about some of the history of our particular market niche. Our whole industry came of age in... Okay, that covers the history of sales in the marketplace. Now, let's move on to some of the trends in recent sales that we've observed. First, I'll give a detailed analysis of industry sales trends by region. Then, we're going to examine our own sales in these same regions. And we'll finish this section by going over our sales trends for new products. Everybody with me? Well then, let's turn our attention to this first chart, which shows overall sales trends worldwide.
Any presentation requires a clear strategy or plan to help you reach your objectives. The aim is not to pass away 20 minutes talking nonstop and showing a lot of nice pictures. It is to deliver a message that is worth hearing to an audience that wants to hear it. However, how many speakers really hold an audience's attention? What's the secret for those who do? First, find out about the audience and what they need to know. Plan what you're going to say and say it clearly and concisely. And make sure to signpost throughout the presentation. What is signposting? The term signposting comes from signs posted on street corners, which tell travelers where they are and where they're going. In presentations, signposting is informing the listener as to what things are going to be talked about and when sections have been completed and new sections are opened. This helps to focus the audience's attention. Once the audience knows what subjects and sections are to come, they can listen to the information from the right perspective and know how to file this information away in the proper places in their minds. One does not want the audience wondering what subjects you are talking about or how the information currently being presented fits into the larger theme of the presentation. Make it simple for the listener. Lead the listener through the presentation with signposting. How does one signpost? A good speaker uses various signposting signals to help hold the audience's attention and make the parts of the presentation very clear. He does this as he introduces the subjects and as he moves through them. One type of signal is to introduce a list. This could begin with a phrase like,
I've divided this section of the presentation into 3 parts.
The speaker then says what the 3 things are and talks about each one at the required level of detail. For example,
There are 3 types of price that we have to think about: economic price, market price, and psychological price. Let's look at each of these in more detail. First, economic price. This is based on production costs and the need to make a profit.
and then the speaker goes on to describe this type of price in more detail. After that, he goes on to talk about the market price and so on. Another signaling technique is to give a link between parts of the presentation. Tell the listeners where one part of the talk finishes and another part starts. For example, a well-organized presentation usually contains different parts and a progression from one part to the next part, with clear phrases like,
That's all I want to say about the development of the product. Now, let's turn to the actual marketing plan. Let's now take a look at sales results.
This technique is very helpful to the audience, including those who are mainly interested in one part only. Another type of signaling is sequencing of information. This usually follows a logical order, usually based on time. So a project may be described in terms of the past, the present, and the future. Key words in sequencing information are
First, then, next. After that, later, at the end, finally,
etc. Still another technique, which helps to emphasize key points, is careful repetition of what has been talked about. Examples are,
as I've already said, there is no alternative but to increase production by 100%.
or
I'd like to re-emphasize the main benefit of the new design. It achieves twice as much power with half as much fuel.
here are some other examples of emphasizing points which have already been talked about.
As we saw in Part 2, as we covered during our discussion of weight savings, recalling our look at sales projections for the next decade,
And here are some useful signposting phrases that should be used to guide listeners. To move on, which means to go to the next subject.
let's move on to the situation in our overseas markets.
To expand on, which means give more information on.
Could you expand on the issue of pricing?
To digress, which means to change to another subject.
If I could digress for just a moment, what about our plans for the new office?
To go back, which means to go to a point earlier in the presentation.
Let's go back to the first item on the agenda.
To recap, which is to repeat a previous part of the presentation.
So, to recap, our sales in the third quarter have been strong in all regions.
To conclude, which is to bring to an end.
I'd like to conclude by discussing the future of our company.
To summarize, which means give the main points.
Next, Peter is going to summarize our marketing strategy.
To turn to, which means to move on.
I'd like to turn to the question of hiring new staff.
To elaborate on, which means to give detailed information on.
The next presentation will elaborate on our sales plans for next year.
Although many phrases can be used to indicate the end of a section and the beginning of another, there is one single word that can be used in almost all cases to signal ends and beginnings. This word is so, most often followed by a pause. We encourage our podcast listeners to use other phrases to make your presentations more interesting. But when one cannot think of a signposting phrase quick enough, the word so is a very handy replacement. Listen and practice these examples and pay special attention to the pauses.
So, what can we conclude from this data? So, let's move on to our market for air conditioners. So, let's take a look at this chart. So, what can we expect for the future? So, what can the past teach us?
A final point concerns signposting and structuring of information. Psychologists have suggested that concentration is reduced after about 20 minutes without a break or a change in activity. Furthermore, audiences should not be overburdened with technical details or given too many facts to remember. It is claimed that to ask people to remember more than 3 things in a 5-minute talk is way too much. Some say that 7 things is the maximum number of things anybody can remember in any presentation. Any such calculations are probably not very reliable, but every speaker needs to think about exactly how much information of a particular type a specific audience is likely to absorb and to plan accordingly. And in keeping with our own advice, we are going to conclude this podcast well inside of 20 minutes, just to make sure you remember all of what we just covered. And our final signpost is, thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to Business English Pod. We'll be back next week with a new podcast. You're listening to Business English Pod, the Business English podcast for professionals on the move. This is the first of 3 episodes on charts and trends. Over these 3 shows, we'll be learning language for dealing with visuals, describing trends, analyzing and comparing data, and making predictions. Visuals refers to any visual element of your presentation, charts, graphs, pictures, and so on. A trend is the general direction, upward or downward, of some metric, that is, measurement, such as price or revenue. For example, when we say the price of oil has risen 30% in the last 3 months, that's a trend.
Clayton, just before we get going, can you tell us why dealing with charts and trends is so important for presentations?
Well, every presentation contains a visual element, whether it's a few words written with a marker on the board or a high-tech PowerPoint presentation with movies and animations. As the old saying goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So pictures, charts, and graphs, they can do the talking for you. But you need to be able to highlight the main points clearly, effectively, and logically. That way, your carefully prepared visuals are going to have the maximum impact on your audience. Now, in today's episode, we're focusing on the basics of how to deal with visuals in your presentation. That is, how to attract attention